afternoon. Good afternoon. My name's Nick Parker and I'm a partner with RSM, and I'm joined by Deborah, who is a director.
Hi there.
And we're delighted to be here, and what we hope to do over the next 15 minutes is to try and lift the lid on the accountancy profession. So who are RSM? Well, RSM is a global group of accountancy firms. In the UK, we're the 7th largest firm. We've got 3,800 staff and partners. We are in 35 locations, and we bill about £314 million of fees a year. But globally, we are, again, the 7th globally. We're in 116 countries, 750 offices, 41,000 staff, and we have a turnover of, I think, about $5 billion. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the accountancy profession. But what we hope to do is, to some extent, describe to you what modern accountancy is, because there's a misconception, I think, that people think that accountancy equals bookkeeping. And to some extent that was right when I first qualified, and I qualified in 1978. And at that time there were basically 4 streams in an accountancy practice. You used to have audit, you had accounts, you had tax, and then you had some consulting. Now in RSM UK now, currently, we have 43 service streams. And the accountancy profession is perhaps the profession that has changed the most over the last 40 years, because it has to adapt. As business changes, the accountancy profession adapts. And that's to some extent what makes it so interesting. Now, I'm a qualified chartered accountant, and I would regard that as being, if you've got any students who are wanting to go into business and they want a base qualification, there is nothing better than the chartered accountant's qualification. And just by becoming a chartered accountant, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll stay doing auditing or whatever. As I've said, there are 43 service lines in our firm. The larger firms possibly have even more. But I was fortunate enough about 18 months ago to be the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, which sent me around the world meeting our members. And it's extraordinary when you meet our members to find out what they actually end up doing. For example, when I was in Ghana, I met the High Commissioner there, or the Chief Diplomat, and he is a qualified chartered accountant. He qualified as a chartered accountant, then moved to the Foreign Office, and then became essentially an ambassador. I then was in New Zealand, and the head of the drugs agency for testing athletes in New Zealand is a chartered accountant. And then in San Francisco, I met an old guy who was one of the first producers of pop videos. He produced videos for Debbie Harry and for Michael Jackson. So you would never think that chartered accountants get into such wide variety of things. We're held out to be quite boring, but in actual fact, when you actually meet them, it is quite extraordinary, the sorts of things that they do. So I think I'm now passing across to Deborah, because Deborah's going to actually tell you how you actually get into a firm like RSM and what is required.
Absolutely, thanks. And I think just to pick up on the point you were making around students entering the world of accountancy and really having such a wealth of opportunities available to them. It is a profession, but the routes into accountancy these days are much more flexible. So within our company, within RSM, as you can see here, we have a variety of channels, if you like, for students to enter the business. So, for example, we take students for work experience, joining us for short periods of time during the holidays. We also take people on internships, normally covering between around 8 and 12 weeks. Again, just to get that first experience. And I think that's really, really important, again these days, to set students apart from what is a very competitive field, making sure that they're actually getting on-the-job experience, whether that is before they go to university, if they choose to do that, or if it's work shadowing somebody that they know, maybe a relative or somebody, something, Or if they decide perhaps at the end that they're going to enter the profession either as a school leaver or as a graduate. These days, there's not necessarily the demand for students to actually study accountancy. In fact, we would actually suggest that if you do want to go down the university route, and you go to uni for 3-4 years, do something that they really enjoy, because let's face it, these days student fees rack up. The average student these days is probably going to come out of university with debts in the region of about 50k. So really, a decision needs to be made fairly early on if university is actually the right route. We offer all of our students, whether they enter as graduates, school leavers, or the chance to study. So for example, if a student joins us at the end of school, they automatically do a 2-year training programme with us. As part of that, they can study for their AAT. After their AAT, they can then go on and do their ACA. They can do their tax exams as well. They can specialise. So a lot of 18-year-olds these days are deciding that actually, let's join a company from day one, earn a salary, get some experience, get some real-life experience behind them, and then decide what they want to do and specialise later on. Typically, school leaver will take around about 5 years, I think it is, to qualify, isn't it?
Yeah, a school leaver is 5 years, a graduate is generally 3 years.
Yeah.
So if you join as a school leaver, you'll be qualified at 23. So you can be, I'll be talking about the sort of salaries that they can get when they qualify in a minute, but you know, there is no difference. Once you've got your ACA qualification, it doesn't matter whether you're a graduate or a school leaver, you're just judged on being an ACA qualified, and that is a global qualification. It is recognised around the world.
And you can't really go wrong, because accountancy gives such a strong grounding, foundation for a career. I think it's really interesting to note that 51% of CEOs for the top 100 businesses in the UK have got a background in finance, and 1 in 5 have an accountancy qualification. Again, showing that the link with business, being numerate, being entrepreneurial, is really strong. And I think when we look at people entering RSM as students or as grads, really, whatever they end up doing in their career, it sets them down a really good path. I also think that by joining a top 7 firm as opposed to a top 4 firm, it gives that little bit of flexibility. There are quite a few pressures joining the top 4. A lot is expected of students. Not to say that a lot isn't expected if you join any firm. However, I think some can be a little bit more nurturing and think of kind of your longer term development in what we think is a fairly friendly and relaxed environment. So
I'm not sure relaxed is the word.
Relaxed in a nice way. Down to earth.
Challenging.
Challenging. So we take on around about 450 students nationally every year. We have a very comprehensive recruitment program, which starts with online process, online assessments, and then I suppose this is a link with technology in the digital age. We actually do videoing now of interviewees, and those interviews comprise of 4 key questions, and the person is interviewed as they're giving their answers, and then those videos are then analysed by members of our recruitment team. So really considering the strengths of candidates rather than just what's on a piece of paper, and we found that that has been hugely beneficial in getting a real feel of the individual and what they can bring to the table rather than just an application form. We then always have an assessment centre, so held regionally, where we invite candidates to come along. They're interviewed again, they do group scenarios, roleplays, that kind of thing. And if they're successful, then they get an offer. And then they join and start one of the routes that they've joined us for, whether that's in an audit team, a tax team, but they're all given a chance to study. Now, obviously, RSM is a company that we don't just do accountancy. So as Nick said earlier on, we have a number of service lines, so students can diversify. Even if they start in accountancy, they might end up doing marketing, they might end up doing HR, like me. The world is really their oyster. I think that's what I'm trying to say, that join a good firm. If you join an accountancy, your career will be bright.
And also, being part of a global group, we often have our trainees are actually seconded abroad. So a number of ours have gone to the US, to Australia, Canada, etc. So the opportunities for them to travel and broaden their horizons are also encouraged. So impact of technology, I mean, it's really quite interesting because sort of about 5, 6, 7 years ago, with AI being introduced, there was basically a number of people were saying, well, that's the end of the accountancy profession. Basically, you will disappear. There'll be absolutely no need for you. So whilst I was actually sitting listening to some of the talks this morning, I actually emailed the Institute to find out what our student numbers had done. And in 2009, we had 15,813 students. As of today, we've got 26,110, which shows that, in actual fact, the demand for accountancy and qualified accountants has increased. In fact, at the moment, there's an enormous shortage of qualified accountants. And AI and digital and everything like that has really been incorporated into the accountancy profession. As I've said, the accountancy profession is the profession that adapts to business. And business demands that, and that is why we have adapted. AI, I mean, if I think back to when I first started training, when you did an audit, you used to take a sample. You used to take a sample of invoices and you used to follow that sample through to make sure that the systems were working. Now with AI, you don't have to do that because the programs that we have will actually interrogate every piece of software within a company, and it will throw out reports to us, which then we investigate. So what AI has done and technology has done for accountancy is it's taken the mundane out. Accountants are now, they're not being replaced, they're being just used more for what they're actually trained for, rather than just doing ticking, as I did when I trained, ticking and plonking, we used to call it, when we were auditing. So far from getting rid of accountants, I'm afraid you're actually probably going to see more of us rather than less of us with technology and the changes that technology is actually bringing. So just for your students where you can work, actually I've gone too far, where you can work, well, as I've said, it is a global qualification. If you train as a UK chartered accountant, you will be able to transfer that qualification anywhere in the world. It is recognised as being one of the best, if not the best, qualification in the world. And you will be able to command very nice salaries, which, and I'm sorry to talk about money, but your students might be quite interested. But a newly qualified accountant, and as we've said, if you're an A-level trainee and you qualify, you can be qualified at 23, you will be on a salary of £50,000 plus. That is what the level is currently, at the average level for a newly qualified accountant with up to 2 years experience. So, it's not badly paid. And accountancy is generally, very fortunately, a very well paid profession. We've got some other stats here from the Institute. The average global member salary is 134,000 and then 108,000 across all sectors. One thing just to point out with regard to training, it used to be a myth that you had to train with a firm of chartered accountants like us. You actually don't. You can actually train in industry now to be a chartered accountant. So there is that possibility. If you want to go into industry and become a chartered accountant, then you can still do that. So it's very, very flexible. Technology has been introduced into all our exams. There are 15 exams for the chartered accountants, and technology, rather than having a technology paper, technology is in every exam because it is so core to what we do now. So basically, the message is do encourage your students to become accountants. We would love to see them. There's a great shortage of them. It's a fantastic opportunity if you're wanting to be in business or do anything with business. If you get the grounding and you become a chartered accountant, then you will never look back. So thank you very much.
Thank you.